make a start then. There's a fair few of you here. Now I've gone back a little bit and I'm using this fabulous Spring Anemone. It's one of my favourite flower sets that Lisa's got. And again, I don't use it nearly enough. And I thought it would be nice to stencil it with you and then do something a little bit different with it, because we're always looking for ways of making our cards look a little bit different, aren't we, and a little bit more special, especially if it's for somebody really special that you're sending it to. So I thought we'd stencil this and then I'd show you how I made the frame that I'm going to do. It's an Eclipse frame, so it all looks like part of the same image but with a little bit of a raised piece in it. It will become clear when we get to it. So I'm using the stencils and I am using the embossing folder, but only on a part of the image. I'm not using the die on this occasion, just the embossing folder, okay? I'm also using the bold words, the nested, scalloped and stitched rectangles to cut my main piece of card to start with. And I'm also using the mini slimline collection swirling daisy. Now, so let's put that to one side and start with our stenciling. Now I've cut myself my piece of card out of using the nested stitched rectangles because I just wanted to stencil straight onto my base piece. Okay, so let's make a start, and I'm going to do the stems of the flowers using this fabulous burnt ochre. I don't use this enough and it's a cracking colour, and it just fits the colour palette that I've chosen for this card. It's not pink, it's not purple, there is pink in it, but not how you would expect me to use pink. I just thought, well, I wanted to go a little bit pastel-y today, so I've changed my colour palette from what I normally use to try and be a little bit different, because I do need to get away from pink and purple. I need to broaden my horizons. I don't use red very often because it intimidates me. I don't know whether any of you have a colour that you tend to steer clear from for that reason, but red for me is red for danger, isn't it? And it does scare me a little bit, so I don't use it very often. Poinsettias, obviously I use it, but again, I'll use white and green and do a white poinsettia. So I've done the stems. I'm going to come in with the green for the leaves. So I'm using the Margarita, and you know I love this colour. But before I take this stencil off, I am going to add some detail onto these leaves using that fabulous Summer Garden shimmer out of the second set of interference inks, primarily because it's one of my favourite colours in the second set, and it just gives a little bit more just a little bit more detail without going mad. Do you know what I mean? It's just a nice colour to use on top of your blending inks, so never worry about using your interference inks on top of your blending inks. They all work perfectly together. They're fabulous. So before I take this off, I'm coming in with this Summer Garden shimmer, and I'm just going to come in as though I'm putting a little bit of shadow on these leaves. So just look at your picture on your stencil and see where the leaf is sitting. So if you can't tell from the shape of the leaf where the flower is, so like this leaf is here, so the flower is sitting in front of it, and the same with this one here. So it gives you an idea as to where to put your shade in. Okay, so I'm just coming up off the mylar onto the leaf, and if you haven't got any idea at all, just come from the bottom of the leaf and spread your ink out a little bit. And this is just such a gorgeous green. It's really just adds that little bit of shading and a little bit of interest on your leaves without doing very much at all. And it just makes your leaves look a little bit more realistic, rather than just, you know, one plain solid colour. But again, see here, because I can't really tell where the flower is without looking at the picture, it's nice to have the picture to hand just to give you an idea where to put that little bit of shading. excuse me. And then this last one's coming off here like this. Okay, might look really weird now, but I really like the effect that it gives you. So, as I say, I wanted to go really soft colours with this. So I'm using the Coral Blush on here. It is Coral Beach, I mean. Again, really lovely colour. I'm using my chunky brush, my chunky stencil brush, because it's just gorgeous. Now I'm using smooth white card here. And you can see that it takes a while to take the colour. Don't worry about it, it will take it eventually. It's just I didn't want to use texture card on this. I wanted to use smooth card. It just takes a little bit more time to get the colour to grab onto the card, that's all. But it does do it. You can either use chunky brushes or your wonder brushes. Either work as well as each other. Perhaps your wonder brushes might give you a quicker, smoother finish. Or of course you could use bijou brushes as well. They're good for sort of larger areas. Now you can see here that I've gone slightly over the stitching. I'm not worried about that. It won't affect the overall look of the card, especially when you add the frame. You won't really focus on that bit. So I just want a reasonable coverage. I don't want it too dark. I just want it dark enough for what I want it to do. So I think we'll leave it at that. Just leave that up there. Beautiful, beautiful. And then we're going to come in with layer 4. Now on here, what I decided to do was use antique pink. I wanted to use a pink, but I didn't want it to be sort of in your face. I didn't want it to be take over the rest of the card. So I've started from the middle of the flowers and working my way out into that flower, because I don't want this pink to go all the way to the edge. So I'm starting in the middle. You don't have to go and fill all of that stencil in if you don't want to. And once you take it off, you'll see what I mean about it looking really different, but beautiful nonetheless. I can't talk and stencil at the same time. Okay, so I've done those flowers. Now this here is also a part of the flower, because this was behind this leaf here. So I think actually it's coloured the same as the flowers. It might be a leaf, but I am going to do it the same as the flowers, but just a little bit darker. So I'm going in with the pink as opposed to the Coral Beach. Okay, now these here are sort of leaves, but not leaves, if you know what I mean. Now what colour did I do those? I think I went in with the antique pink on these as well, so we'll stick with that, and we'll go antique pink on here. Don't worry if you come over into the flower, it's not going to spoil it. Okay, see what I mean? It hasn't filled that flower with colour on the pink, but it's just lifted the centres of the flowers, and that's what I like. I love that effect. So here again we've got sort of little buds, and then in here is the centre of these flowers. Now on the one that I've already prepared, I used almond frosting, but I think on this one I'm actually going to go back in with the margarita and make that green. But on here I'm just going to go a little bit of antique pink, and then what I'm going to do on top is I'm going to go back in with that Coral Beach, just to add a little bit more, a little bit of a different colour, so they look a little bit different. Okay, so here I'm going in with the margarita as opposed to almond frosting, just to make this one look a little bit different. Okay, so I've gone in there with the margarita. Now I prefer that to the one that I've already done. And now we're going to come and put the veins on the leaves. And again, I'm coming in here with that antique pink, because I think the antique pink and this summer garden just go together really well. So that's what I'm going to do my leaves with. Never worry about using what you'd class as an odd colour to use on a leaf. I think you've seen me use purple, and I think Lisa's used sort of a purple before as well. But I know Lisa likes using grey on the veins of her leaves. So, you know, you can use whatever you like. As I've said, artistic license, it's your piece of artwork. You do exactly what you want to do. And you will get a different finish to other people. In fact, you'll probably get a different finish to what you did the first time. Okay, I really like that, and I like the way that the darker green is sort of lifting the leaves away from the flowers. So if I just lift that up a little bit so you can see it better. I never get this in the right place. See what I mean? Where that green sort of comes from behind the petals of the flowers. I just think it's really lovely. So there's your stenciled piece. Now normally we'd just mat and layer it and add it to a card. Job done. But I thought, I'm sure we could do it a little bit differently, make it look a little bit different. So what I thought was I would do an Eclipse frame. Now they're easy to do, a little bit fiddly, but I think it's well worth the effort. So I got my 2 pieces of die out of the set, and I chose 2 that would give me sort of a realistic size frame, if you like. And then you've just got to decide where you want it on that image. Now you can see that my pieces of tape here are quite furry. That's because I've cut mount board out with them. Now they won't stick to anything. So I will run this through, and I'll use an extra little piece of tape just to take that down there, and just to take this down here, and I will run it through. Okay, just so that you can see what it looks like once you've cut it. Okay, so let's take this bit of tape off here gently, because I don't want to ruin my piece of card, like so, and my other bit off here, like so, dead gentle. Okay, and then this is just going to move because it's got no sticky on that tape anyway. So you're then left with 3 pieces. Okay, so you've got your outer frame, your inner frame, and the piece of your image in the middle. Okay, so I wanted to put some embossing on this little piece here because I wanted it to look, I wanted it to have a little bit more interest within the frame. Okay, so I'm just going to place this in here. Now obviously it's only going to emboss the part of the image that I'm adding into the folder, which is absolutely fine. Just takes a little bit more lining up just to make sure you've got it all in the right place, and then I'll just run this through. Okay, so there's my embossed piece. I don't know whether it picks it up. Should do. It will pick up the deboss way better than it picks up the emboss, but it is just gorgeous. So now you've got 3 pieces that you want to put on your base card. Okay, so my base card is a 5x7. In fact, let's just move this out of the way. My base card is 5x7, and what I was going to do was just put this straight onto the base card, but I thought, well, it looks a little bit lost, and I don't want it to look a bit lost. So what I did was I cut the large scalloped rectangle from that rectangle set, and that's what's going to be my card base. Okay, so I'll just pop that down there as my backing, and then I've got my 3 pieces that are going to make my card. Now I've already prepared the bits that I want to use. So there's my base piece. So I'm going to add this down first so that we can just, I can then show you how I did the frame that's going to sit higher up, which is going to give you your eclipse part. Now the one thing I'd say is if you're using a frame that's got, like, you know, shaping like this one has, make sure you've always got it the right way up rather than the wrong way up, because I don't want to do it wrong. Let's just make sure that that's right. Yeah. So I'm going to pop that down there. Try and get it as square as you can. You know me, I never measure. So just get it square. Okay. And then we come to our frame that we're going to just put in the middle. Now what I've used is some just thick cardboard. This is about 1 mil thick, and it cuts beautifully with Lisa's dies. Okay, and this is one that I did, and I've cut 3 of these so that it's given it quite a bit of depth. Okay, so you can see where the outer die has gone, and that's the inner one. So I've got my frame out of the middle. All right, I wouldn't go any thicker than this card. I did measure it, and it is about 1 mil thick. I wouldn't go any thicker than that, because I think you might come a cropper with your die cutting machine, and I don't want you to mess it up. So I've cut 3 and I've glued them all together, and then I've glued the frame that cuts out like this one, this piece here, and I've glued that on the top. So I could use this one on the top of that because they're all the same colours, but I'm not going to. So I've already glued them all together because I didn't want to be just gluing layers and layers of card together during the live. But you can see, if you look carefully, you can see there are 3 layers of card here, and then my layer of paper that's done my stenciling on the top. Okay, now all I would say is take your time putting these together, and like I say, if you've got a shaped frame like this one is, make sure you've always got them the right way round. Now this is going to go here. Now because I've used grey card, you'll see a sort of a shadow. I actually like that because it gives you that's where you get that eclipse look from, that you can actually see a little bit of the grey round the edge of that frame. Okay, if you don't want that, you want it to be white, then just paint it with a bit of gesso before you put this top layer on, if you want to. It's totally up to you, obviously. So then I'm going to add that down there, and then my other piece that I've embossed is going in the middle. Now you have to mess with this, you've got to sort of force it into place. So let's put this down, and then we can add the other piece, and then I can just add my sentiment. So like I said, there are 3 layers here, plus my stenciled piece. Now you know this is the right way up because you've got your stenciling on it. But when you're actually putting that frame together, just make sure that they're all the same way up. Now I'm just going to hold that in place just for a couple of seconds. So that's popped down there, and that's not going to go anywhere. So that gives you your sort of raised piece of your frame, all right? And then this piece is going in the middle. So I'm going to put my glue, I'm actually going to put my glue on this base card because I think it's going to be a little bit easier, because then I can fiddle around with this without worrying about getting glue actually on the outside of that frame. So I'm just going to put my glue in there, and then I can manipulate this piece into the centre. Like so. So if you go in at an angle on one side, then all you've got to do is just press this down inside that frame. It's going to catch on those pieces of card, but because you know you cut it out of that piece, you know it's going to fit. Okay, and once you can not hear it sort of cracking or sort of clipping anything, you know it's flat to that piece of card. Okay, So there's your Eclipse part of your frame. And I just think it's a way of really lifting the stenciling that you've done and making it look a little bit different. Okay, so then all I've done is cut my sentiment. Now you can't really tell on here, but there are 2 shades of colour on here, because I've done antique pink at the bottom and I did the coral beach at the top. It looks, you can sort of see it on the camera. It looked really obvious yesterday when I did it, but obviously as it's dried they look quite similar now, but whatever. And then I'm just going to stick that onto my frame like that. So because I'm covering that frame, I'm going to put my glue on here rather than on the actual sentiment, because then I know that I'm not going to glue in the wrong place, if you know what I mean. I'm not going to get glue where I shouldn't have glue. So that's just going on there, and I've lined it up so that it sort of meets the edge of the outside frame like so, and just make sure that it's stuck down. Now you can do this with any of Lisa's layering stencils. You could just have one in the corner if you wanted. I just happen to have a piece of card that sort of complemented the colours that I've used. So it's a quick and simple way of really enhancing what you've already got. You can get grey board from all sorts of craft shops. Just make sure it's not too thick, because what you want to do is put this on your grey board like so and cut it out. And if you go any thicker than 1mm thick, I think you'd struggle to get it through your die cutting machine. Slightly thicker possibly you get away with, but not very much more, and you might just risk spoiling your die cutting machine, and I'd hate for you to do that. So there you go. So I've got another piece that I can use on another card at some point when I get round to it, but I just really like the effect, and I think it's quite simple to do, but quite effective. So there you go, there's my Eclipse frame card using the Spring Anemone, and I hope you like that. So have a fabulous week everybody, stay safe, look after one another, and I'll see you very soon. Thanks for joining me, bye now.